私にとって K さんはかけがえのない存在です。そして私たちにとって結婚は自分たちの心を大切に守りながら生きていくために必要な選択でした。
Love. They say there's nothing like it. No force stronger to inspire men and women to perform incredible feats and unspeakable horrors in its name. And royalty are no different. From the creation of new religions to the abdication of one's destiny, love, or some would say lust, was always the reason. But is it always worth the sacrifice? Well, I'll leave that answer to you. Once we've delved into a story about one princess who sacrificed everything for love, and the other who gained everything from exploiting it. We've heard this story before on this channel, right? A beautiful princess who gave up everything to be with the man that she loves. It's as classic a Meghan Markle tale as it gets. Never mind that she was a D-list actress at best who spent her entire 35 years on this planet before meeting Harry trying to lift herself up from the obscurity that she was wallowing in for so long, and failing despite her best efforts. But that's a lot to give up in exchange for becoming a princess of the United Kingdom, isn't it? I mean, I don't know how she did it. What's funny is this story of sacrificing a career and everything you've worked hard for is actually one that is a reality for some women who have married into royalty. For instance, and she's not the subject of today's video, but the current Empress of Japan once enjoyed a very successful career as a diplomat, and it really shows when you consider that the current emperor, her husband, spent 7 entire years basically chasing after her and trying to persuade her to marry him. That's how hesitant and reluctant she was to give up everything she worked very hard for. So it sounds like Meghan is some kind of a magpie trying to pick up stories, bits and pieces from various royal women, Princess Catherine included, and adopt them as her own. Anyways, we'll return to Meghan in a bit. But what if I told you that this story of immense sacrifice, only a work of fiction in Markle's case, we've established that, is actually a reality not for the Empress of Japan, but for a young Japanese princess. Seeing as I'm still in Japan, and since I frequently cover royalty, or ex-royalty, I should say, I thought it would be interesting to introduce my audience, if you don't know about her already, to a royal who couldn't be any more different to Meghan Markle. Japan's most controversial princess, or I should say ex-princess, Mako. For a princess, Mako is pretty low-key. Only a handful of years my senior, I personally never really heard about her until a couple of years ago when news broke out of her marriage to the love of her life, a young Japanese lawyer by the name of Kei Komuro. Now, when you think royal wedding, you're probably picturing all the pomp and circumstance that we've all come to naturally expect from such elite echelons of society. Think the tens of millions of pounds spent on Meghan and Harry's 2018 wedding, for instance. You know, the one that they didn't actually want and only set up for us plebs to enjoy. I mean, oh my god. The generosity. I'm about to faint. But unlike the ungrateful pair from Montecito, Princess Mako's marriage to her husband wasn't an extravagant affair. Far from it. In fact, I'd wager that most of you in the audience who are married have probably had a far more extravagant ceremony than the one that was held for the young couple on the 26th of October of 2021. Just over 2 years ago today, actually, after a 4-year-long engagement and several delays. Their ceremony was more akin to a low-key civil union of sorts, and their clothing really reflected that. Rather than decorating herself with the gold and silk-threaded junitoe, traditionally worn by royal Japanese brides, Mako instead styled herself in a pale green knee-length dress and jacket, and a pair of simple white shoes to go with that. Her jet black hair was pulled into a simple yet elegant chignon, and Kei too looked as though he could have been on his way to work, rather than marrying into Japanese royalty. And that's because he technically wasn't. As per Japanese Imperial law, all female members of the royal family must be stripped of all of their royal titles, privileges, and rights if they choose to marry a commoner. Yeah, perhaps the British royal family should have pulled that one on Meghan. I mean, I should think she would have been running for the hills faster than you can say.
Quidditch.
Men, on the other hand, are indeed free to marry commoners as they wish, and the current empress, as I mentioned earlier, was a commoner herself, as is Princess Mako's mother, the current crown prince's wife. Now, this issue of female restrictions when it comes to the Japanese monarchy and inheritance of the throne is quite interesting in and of itself, and is definitely worthy of a separate video, which I am planning on working on in the near future. But to cut a long history lesson short, Princess Mako was faced with two options. She could either give everything up to marry the love of her life and hopefully live a long and happy life with him, or she would live out the rest of her days as a chaste shrine maid. And as you've probably gleaned from the video so far, she chose love. And I can't say I blame her. Undoubtedly already a difficult decision to make, leaving behind your entire existence as you've known it, including your family, who seem to have parted with her quite amicably based on their goodbyes. As detached as they seem to be, I do see affection in their faces, well, in their eyes, I should say. They're wearing masks. The press really didn't make it any easier for the young couple. And not in an imaginary slight, we deserve nothing less than worship. Sorry, I don't know why that came out, in very bad British kind of way either, a la Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. No. This bullying and harassment was intense. In a speech made by the princess after her wedding to Kay, she referred to the different types of difficulties that they will face in their new life together. These difficulties that she referred to were very likely in reference to the appalling treatment of both her and Kay and his family by the Japanese tabloids and even social media users throughout their 4-year-long engagement, 3 of which they were physically separated for. And this harassment ended up seeing Princess Mako being diagnosed with full-blown PTSD. And you can't fake that diagnosis. I mean, just ask Amber Heard. Now, we all know that this whole media versus royal couple thing has been made infamous by now by Meghan and Harry, who practically live to scream about racism and sexism and, oh, let's not forget, jealousy. Everyone from Catherine and William to the monarch himself are jealous of the two, or specifically, I should say, of Meghan. And recently we're hearing that they're so jealous that they cut them off financially and strip them of security, leaving them for dead in their multi-million-dollar Montecito mansion, and of course, millions of dollars in their bank accounts, all to ensure that the amazing Meghan, the Meghan that we couldn't even tell from a bar of soap before October 2016, or potentially even November 2017 actually. No one even cared who she was after that scathing statement was released. I know I certainly didn't. But all this was done to stop her from outshining the royal family. Must be awful, living in your own fictional bubble of delusion. But you know what's worse than that? When it's not fiction. When the hellscape surrounding you and your beloved is not only real, but relentless. And for what? You're probably wondering. Kay is an accomplished young lawyer. He seems to be a man of good character. There isn't a string of shady things from his past. He doesn't have a criminal record. He doesn't appear to be a liar or a thief or even a grifter. Because guess what? It was made very clear to him, because it's established Japanese imperial law, that he wouldn't be getting anything, any privileges, by marrying the princess. And this includes not benefiting from a 14 million yen dowry, which is the equivalent of roughly $1.6 million, that royal princesses in Japan are usually given as a parting gift, once they've been stripped of everything else, before they head out into their new lives with their husbands. Because in this instance, the harassment and bullying from the press was so bad that Princess Mako didn't want to give them an inch. She didn't want to give them any reason to hold on to and accuse her and Kay of being grifters. So she turned it down. So here we have a young princess who gave everything up to be with the man that she loves, which, yes, can sound very romantic and something out of a book or a movie, but to me is quite tragic that she even had to make that choice. And we have, on the other hand, a woman who pretends to have given up everything for the man that she loves. Because I truly don't believe that people like Meghan Markle, based on the way that she's treated her father and her family, whatever you may think of them, her friends, her ex-lovers, her own husband, her in-laws who gave her everything, is such a creature capable of feeling love? I would say not. But this is a woman who pretended, best as she could, because I believe she failed, to be in love, when in reality it was crystal clear that all she was interested in was the money and the power and the glory that comes with status. In this particular instance, of course, royal status, which she foolishly believed were her due, which is why she behaved like a brat and continues to do so. She thinks that she is entitled to this all simply by virtue of being herself. And we've all seen how disastrous that mindset has proven to be. It's even interesting to contrast her behavior with Kay, who was the commoner in this instance, which is the role that Meghan plays in the story. Kay, who stood by his wife, or his fiancée, despite knowing he wouldn't get anything out of it but her. But that was enough for him, because that's exactly what he wanted. As opposed to Meghan, who lied about wanting to hit the ground running, about changing the world, doing the work in the Commonwealth, only to grab the prince, her cash cow, and yeet all the way back to the United States before 2 years even came to a close. This is why I wanted to talk about this, because Meghan and Harry will have us all believe that theirs is a love story for the ages, for the history books, when in reality, it's one of the biggest con stories, right? Con jobs, or whatever you call them, in recent history. And what also stood out to me is how much younger Princess Mako and Kay are in comparison to Meghan and Harry. I mean, their story really started all the way back in 2017 when they were in their mid-20s. Because like I said, they're not that much older than me. So yeah, pretty much in their mid-20s. And they handled everything with the elegance and the decorum and the dignity that you would actually expect from real royalty, as opposed to the middle-aged moaners who have made a laughingstock of themselves in record time. I mean, it really is comparing chalk and cheese, isn't it? In case you're wondering, Princess Mako and Kay moved to New York City, and that is where they reside today, with Kay practicing as a New York attorney. And last I read, based off my research, is that the princess was, or I should say former princess, was either looking into working at a gallery at some point or is currently working at one. So a very low-key, quiet, and very private life, because that's all they wanted. About their hopes and aspirations together, this is what Kay had to say. I would like to make a warm family life with Mako. I would like to do everything in my power to support her. During happy times, and even those that are not, I would like to stand by her and be an invaluable part of her existence.
マコさんを愛しております。一度きりの人生を愛する人と共に過ごしたいと思っています。
You know, as someone who is very close in age to this young couple, I get it. You know, and I'm probably one of the least romantic people you will ever come across. And I mean that. I don't have a shred of romance in me. I don't know how Zach puts up with it, but, you know, I guess he has enough romance in him to make up for it, you know, enough for us both. But even I, unromantic creature that I am, I've known love. I know its value. And I mentioned earlier in the video that princesses in the Japanese monarchy are really faced with two options, and I'm not going to delve into the reasons behind it because that's for a separate video, but they either marry for love and lose everything or become chaste shrine maids. I mean, that's not much of a choice, is it? Unless you just never meet anyone, which is fine. I guess, you know, if you're not sacrificing that aspect of your life, if you don't know what you're missing out on, or if it's something you're committed to, no judgment. But if it's something that's forced upon you, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to judge other cultures, especially when I'm sitting in Japan as we speak, but it's harsh. And it's hardly fair, especially with young people who have their whole lives ahead of them, and to deprive them of an experience as beautiful as true love. It's just sad. And I'm glad that Princess Mako found that in Kei, and I'm glad that he stood by her, and he seems, as I said, very committed to her, and she very committed to him, which is what makes this love story so profound, I suppose, and why I was drawn and compelled to make a video about it. And you don't have to come up with a Netflix series or an interview or a book and declare time and time again that yours is the love story of the century, you know, because if it's true, you don't have to say it. And if you have to keep saying it and beating our heads with it over and over again, well, perhaps it's time to admit that maybe you're just trying to convince yourself. But yeah, that's it for this video. You know, a little sprinkle of romance, which is something that I don't usually do on my channel because, as I said, I don't have a romantic bone in my body. But that's it. Arigatou gozaimashita. And I will talk to you later. Enjoy the rest of your week or weekend or whenever I end up uploading this thing. Bye.